And now, the Rink Rap Podcast from Forever Blueshirts, talking all things New York Rangers hockey. Here's your host, Jim Cerny.
What's happening, Blueshirts faithful? Welcome to Rink Rap. I am Jim Cerny. Thanks for hanging out with us again this week. Probably going to do a couple podcasts this week because it's going to be a busy week. This is the NHL trade deadline week. It comes Friday, 3 o'clock Eastern. You know all the numbers. You know the date. You've been looking forward to this, wondering what's going to be happening, how the Rangers are going to retool and use the March 6th trade deadline as the retool to their greatest advantage, or so you hope. Who's going to stay, who's going to go. We're going to talk about all that. And certainly after the fact, we're going to be breaking things down too as well. We're going to do make sure to try and get up at least a quick recording on Friday after the trade deadline passes and evaluate what the New York Rangers did, what they didn't do. But here's a key thing to remember, and a bunch of things that we want to get into here in the intro and all that. But a real key thing to keep in mind is that if player X, Braden Schneider, Lafreniere, whoever it might be, okay, if they don't get traded ahead of the deadline, doesn't mean that they're going to be here forever or that they're going to be part of the team next season. Because remember, you can make that trade. You can make a move in the off season, you know, before the drafts, before July 1 free agency, on the day of free agency on July 1, as they did with Keandre Miller last offseason, the trade with Carolina. Like, this isn't the be all and end all of the retool when the trade deadline passes Friday at 3 o'clock Eastern. So keep that in mind. I sense some unrest. You know, oh, if we don't move Lafreniere, if we don't move Schneider, you know, then what? You know, Friday is not the drop dead date, but it's an important date. And the Rangers, I think, with all this buildup in the retool, the letter 2.0 going out, really, you know, putting your cards out there, putting your cards on the table and saying, hey, this is where we're at. This is where we're headed. This is what we're going to do. I think the Rangers need to follow through on that. It's not going to be easy. It's threading a needle, a tiny needle. But the Rangers are going to do some. They're going to do things. And I think it's going to revolve around Vincent Trocheck for sure. You know, I don't think I'm breaking any new ground in saying that. But it's got to be more than the obvious. They got to do more than the obvious. Like, we knew that they needed to trade Artemi Panarin and Carson Soucy, pair of unrestricted free agents. Well, they did that already. But that can't be it. Right? Because getting the third round pick for Soucy, getting Liam Greentree and a conditional pick or two from the Los Angeles Kings for Panarin, it is what it is. But it's certainly not enough. Because this organization does need a massive retool. It needs an influx of talent. Because the talent's not there. We saw that this season at the NHL level. You know, Rangers get a couple injuries and it's a collapse. Yeah, they weren't good enough on the NHL level anyway. But when the depth was tested, the depth wasn't there. And then, you know, then you look at what's going on at Hartford this season. You know, I know they had the recent 3-game winning streak, God bless them. But, you know, there's not a lot there, right? You know, there are some older veterans, there are career minor leaguers, and very few real NHL prospects on the Hartford Wolfpack. Let's be realistic. And then you go beyond that. The guys that aren't even pro yet, you know, guys that are playing in the OHL or playing overseas or playing in college, you know, all right, there's some hope that the Malcolm Spences and EJ Emerys and Drew Fortescues and Nathan Aspinalls, and now you have Liam Greentree, maybe even Artyom Gonchar down the road, you know, that, you know, some of these guys might be players in the NHL. Certainly you hope so. But this pipeline's pretty barren for the New York Rangers. So they got to refill, you know, they got to refuel, they got to reset, use all your words that you want to: rebuild, retool, reset. They need to do it. They really need to build up what is a very barren pipeline. And so trading Vincent Trocheck on Friday, and by all accounts, and certainly listening to Vinny the other day and his comments, you get the feeling that that's the next shoe to drop for the Rangers. So we're going to get into a deeper dive of that on the Rink Rat podcast today. And certainly when all the deals are done, we're going to analyze everything, both at Forever Blue Shirts, over at Forever Blue Shirts, the website, foreverblueshirts.com, and right here on the Rink Rat podcast. And we're, listen, it's just not going to be a one-day analysis, because this is going to be ongoing analysis for the Rangers. And certainly we'll get into all that. And we'll have guests, and I know Pierre McGuire is going to be joining us down the road. We're going to, bring some of the beat guys on, or beat reporters on, and we'll continue to break this thing down. Right now, let's start with the current Rangers and coming out of the break and where they're at. Listen, I know where they're at, right? They're at the bottom of the standings. They have played 3 overtime games since the break. Good on them. They not good on them was blowing the 2-goal lead against Philadelphia and ending up losing 3-2 in overtime in their first game after the break. But the 2 games after that, good on them. They showed some life. They showed some heart. They didn't play 60 minutes in either one of those games. Pittsburgh on Saturday at the Garden, and then Columbus on Monday at the Garden. Playing 60 minutes is not New York Rangers hockey, apparently. I know Mike Sullivan would like it, but doesn't happen. This team, again, maybe it's just a skill thing. Maybe they don't have enough talent. Maybe they don't have enough, whatever. Fill in the blank. Something beyond talent. Will. Compete. Desire. I don't know. But the ability to play 60 minutes as a team, a real good competitive 60 minutes, seems out of the reach of this group. They haven't done it in any of the 3 games that they've played since the break, and they haven't done it a lot this season. They haven't done it a lot the past 2 seasons. So the Rangers come out of the break, 3 overtime games. 1, they let a 2-goal lead slip away. They lose 3-2 in overtime. When they had a power play at the beginning of overtime, they couldn't finish it off. The one thing that they do pretty well is play on the power play. But, 5-on-4 at the end of the third period against Philly, and 4-on-3 to start overtime, and couldn't get it done there. They end up losing. But listen, they showed a little something coming back. They were down early against Pittsburgh. They wipe out that 2-goal deficit. I'm not sure if they rally. Maybe they do, based on what we've seen the last 2 games. Maybe they do rally. Even if that second goal that Pittsburgh scored early on in the afternoon contest Saturday against the Rangers, even if that one hadn't been wiped off after the challenge, listen, maybe the Rangers do come back in that one. If that goal is not wiped away, maybe they still come back. But listen, the most important thing is, not most important, 2 points to make here are good on them that they didn't quit on either game, the Pittsburgh game or the Columbus game. However, hey, boys, maybe try playing 60 minutes. Give it a complete 60-minute effort, as opposed to, especially the Columbus game. That was a snooze fest in the first period against Columbus. They're down 2-0. Second period, they actually, showed a little bit more life. Doesn't matter. They fall behind. They got the goal from Miller on the power play, but that one gets wiped off. Again, we could do a whole show on what goalie interference is, should be, what we believe it is, what it really is, what it is from night to night, from situation to situation. It doesn't seem like the coaches, the players, everybody kind of throws up their hands and says, oh, okay, that's how it was called this time. What about next time? All right. Anyway, you can argue, listen, the Rangers won one on Saturday, won getting the call going their way, reversing the call. And they didn't get the call on Monday. Columbus was able to win that challenge. And then, how Rangers was it this season to go from, all right, we score a power play goal, it's 2-1. Okay, the goal comes off the board. Now it's 2-0, but we're still on the power play. And oh, yeah, we give up a shorthanded goal. And now we're down 3-0. So we went from 2-1 to 3-0 like that. How Rangers was that this season? And then, Matthew Olivier somehow beats Igor, far side. Now it's 4-0. But the Rangers came back and they didn't quit. Now, granted, Columbus, I don't know if you know the numbers, but Columbus has been outscored by like 22 goals in the third period this season. And Elvis Merzlikins hasn't been exactly great all season. But in third periods, like Columbus really, really gets run out of buildings. They've only blown and lost one game in regulation, though, by blowing the third period lead. So there is that. And they kind of bent as far as they could bend, giving up 4 goals, giving up the lead, taking it to overtime. But Columbus did end up winning that game. So that's another one that they didn't lose, even though they did, cough up the lead. But listen, the best thing to come out of that from the New York Rangers, number 94, Gabe Perreault. Loved it. Loved it. You've been able to see, even right before the break, and certainly after the break, starting to assert himself more. He looks more confident out there, making plays, looking to make plays, getting to the dirty areas in front of the net as well. He's not a big guy, but he's been doing it, getting in on the forecheck, winning board battles. But it's the vision that you've seen. He sees the ice certainly differently than somebody like me or you watching here. We're all experts, right? But let's be honest. This guy has elite vision out there. Great hockey IQ. I mean, really, that's what he's burnished his reputation on, and has had so much success at the collegiate level, the USNTDP, that level. The World Juniors, he's had tremendous success there because he just sees the game so well. He's a step ahead. Now, listen, at the NHL, it's a tougher task. Not only do you have a lot of great players that see the game really well with great experience, but men that are much bigger and stronger than you are and faster. So, listen, that really puts the screws to Gabe Perreault as a top prospect. You got to figure it out. Okay. You're not as big. You're not as strong. These are men. They've played a lot longer than you. They've seen a lot more things than you have at this level. The game is played at a much, 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 much faster, pace in the NHL. And to his credit, listen, the kid's had a bunch of quiet games where you didn't notice him, right? He's 20 years old. He's a smart kid, and he's figuring it out. Now, granted, he gets to play with JT Miller and Mika Zibanejad. He's getting top 6 minutes. Super smart. That's what the Rangers have to do. That's what their season needs to be about. If they take one positive out of this crappy season, out of this dismal season, the retool, if they take one positive out of it, and hopefully there are going to be more, but if they take one, it needs to be that Gabe Perreault figures it out early on, gets his opportunity, has his ups and downs. He has his super quiet games, but he figures it out and he gains confidence, and he has nights like he did against Columbus, right? Career high 3 points, scores 2 huge goals, loved the confidence, loved the play, but loved the confidence he showed. Off that face-off there, Rangers got to 4-1. Gavrikov scored. Loved how Perreault helped create a turnover, and then without hesitation, just rifled the puck towards the net and blows it by Merzlikins on the glove side. I'm not sure he does that 10 games ago, but he's gaining in the confidence, right? Sees what he can do, knows he can make a play, didn't hesitate, got that puck, boop, fired it, goal. and then he gets involved in the dirty area, late in the third period there, helped set up that goal by Will Borgen, a puck that glances off Borgen's skate and over the goal line, gets an assist there, going to the dirty areas. And then there's a rush up ice, who's smack dab in the middle of it, heading straight down the middle, trying to find a soft spot, which he does. And Borgen then finds Perreault in that soft spot, and the kid buries it to tie the game. And then he got, listen, I know he ends up being on the ice for the game-winning goal for Columbus in overtime, but he was out there. He earned that moment. Mike Sullivan said he earned that moment. He earned the opportunity to be out there. And you saw he was so confident taking that puck on the rush on right wing. He was feeling it. Now, listen, the shot gets blocked. It goes off the glass. He's caught deep. Vinny Trocheck, a veteran, no 20-year-old rookie, he gets caught as well. And, it's a 2-on-1 the other way. And Columbus scores. And, all right, Marchenko, he beats Igor. We can talk about that too. But okay. He took his shot. He was feeling it and he let it go. It got blocked. He got caught. So did Trocheck. That certainly didn't help. So be it. But if there's anything that comes out of this dismal, crappy, disappointing, use your adjective season, it's that when this season ends, the Rangers are feeling good about Gabe Perreault being a top 6 fixture in their lineup next season. And Gabe Perreault is feeling good about it too, and understands, okay, I need to work on this. I need to work on that this summer, but I'm on my way. I did some good things. I did some things that I need to learn from, but I did some good things, a lot of good things down the stretch of the season. I can do this. I can be an NHL player. I can be a top 6 forward. I can be, a guy that is among your scoring leaders. That would be a success for this season. Not a lot of success for the Rangers this season, but that would be a success. So my Gabe Perreault rant for you, if you will. Another takeaway, boy, how about JT Miller and Adam Fox both dropping in their comments, talking about, the game flow. Well, we could have been 2-1 and then it's 3-0 and then the crowd's booing and we're booed off the ice, both referencing being booed off the ice by the fans. Like, okay. Yeah, you were. You've won 7 games on home ice this entire season. Yeah, you're losing 4-0 to the Columbus Blue Jackets. I mean, listen, right now, Columbus is a better team, but you're losing 4-0. And you didn't look good getting there, right? Effort-wise and skill-wise and all that. So, yeah, you're going to get booed off the ice. But those fans, but you won them back in the third period, right? The effort was there. You're moving your legs, aggressively, taking it to the net, winning puck battles. That's what the fans want to see. They want to see wins too, but that's what they want to see. So, segueing, Adam Fox, comments about being part of this Rangers retool. How you feeling about it? How you feeling about it? I'll tell you how I feel about it, and also get into the trade deadline and what's coming up when we return right here on Rink Wrap. Welcome back to Rink Wrap. I'm Jim Cerny. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for following us on social media at Jim Cerny, also at Forever Blueshirts, and of course, visiting our website, foreverblueshirts.com. Very much appreciate your support. And by the way, this is a total side thing here, personal thing. I appreciate the support from the fans who've liked or given the thumbs up or certainly just followed my work for ESPN Plus covering Princeton hockey for the second straight season, mainly on the women's side. Did some men's games as well, did some color commentary, some play-by-play. And this past weekend, I was real fortunate to be on the play-by-play call for the best of 3 quarterfinals series between the Princeton women and Harvard. Princeton coming in as the number 2 seed, Harvard the number 8 seed, and 2 of the best goalies in the nation. It was a great setup. Princeton won 1-0 on Friday night. Uma Cornier, 27 save shutout. Then Aidensley Tuffy backstops 41 saves for Harvard in their win as they punched back on Saturday with a 3-1 victory. And then, Sunday getting to call that game at Hobie Baker Rink, kind of a win or go home situation for both teams. And it's been a terrific season for each of the teams. And then Princeton erupting for 5 goals in that one and punching their ticket to the semifinals. So they'll be on their way to Lake Placid this week. So for those of you that reached out and gave a thumbs up or said good work or whatever, I appreciate that. Appreciate the support, and I'd like to also congratulate publicly the Princeton women. Very, very cool. They were co-champions in the ECAC this season. First time that they've won the regular season championship in program history. So kudos to them. Courtney Kessel in her first season as head coach there, doing a heck of a job bringing that home. And then, getting this team to the semifinals for the first time since 2022. And they will take on a third-ranked or third-seeded Quinnipiac on Friday. And if they win there, they'll play the winner of the Yale-Cornell game, semifinal game, in the championship game up in Lake Placid next weekend as well. So best of luck to the Princeton women. And I think no matter what happens, there's a really good chance here. Obviously, they punched their ticket to the NCAA tournament if they win the ECAC postseason championship next weekend. But I think they're right there right now with the NPI, with the index, that they should get an invite, even if they lose their semifinal game on Friday. So they could be in the tournament either way. But we'll see. Best of luck to the Princeton women, and thank you all for your support of the work that I do over there. So back to the Rangers. Adam Fox. So he's asked, he was on LTIR and was unavailable for comments when the Rangers retool letter was sent out by Chris Drury, and Artemi Panarin got traded, and basically all hell breaking loose. White flag raised up on the season, throw in the towel on the season and say, hey, we're going to, we're not making the playoffs. Okay. So we're going to start, tearing this thing down, but not all the way. It's not a rebuild. It's a retool. And, we've argued that too about what it really is. In fact, we had Peter Baugh on last week from The Athletic, and he's like, listen, this is a rebuild. If you're going to get this right, you got to rebuild it, because there are so many holes up and down from the NHL level all the way through the prospect pipeline. So many holes to fill. But again, retool for the Rangers. Anyway, Adam Fox has asked a direct question by the media the other day about whether he wanted to, what's your take on this? But, do you want to be here? Do you want to be a part of this? And I think we all expected Adam Fox, who moved heaven and earth before he was even in the NHL. He moved heaven and earth from 2 different organizations to set up getting traded to the New York Rangers. He didn't want to play for anyone else. So he moved heaven and earth, which was, listen, it was within his power to do so, to become a New York Ranger, come home, Long Island kid, play with the Rangers. I mean, we know he loves being a Ranger. So he expected him to say, yeah, for sure, I'm all in. I'm all in. Retool is good. I have faith in management. We're going to get this turned around quickly. We've got Mike Sullivan as coach. We've got Igor, and net. Nah, none of that. That's not what you got from Adam Fox. Instead, what you got from Adam Fox was a lot of ambiguity in his answer. Well, I'm going to focus on today, focus on this game. And then he said, that's really a conversation for when the games are done, the off season. So he's not sold. I think the Rangers need to sell him on this retool. That's saying something. right? It tells you that there's a lot of crap behind the scenes. We've talked about it, these last 2 seasons. It's not just the crap on the ice. It's the crap behind the scenes. Maybe Adam Fox is just sick of it. I don't know. I was wondering if maybe I'm reading too much into this. And the more, I thought about it and I go back, listen to the quotes and, the question being asked. It was such a direct question. And if he was all in, it was so easy for him to say, yeah, I'm in. I believe in the organization. We're going to turn this baby around. I'm going to be a key part of it, But instead, that wasn't the answer. Let's push it off till the off season. So I wrote the story. Certainly everybody else on the beat wrote the story. It's been a lot of conversation on social media. So Colin Stevenson of Newsday, after the game against Columbus, said, hey, one more question for Adam Fox in the post-game scrum. I just want to let you know, I want to just clarify your statement that you said the other day about when we asked you about the retool and wanting to remain with the Rangers. So he basically said, let me give you a mulligan. Maybe you didn't exactly say what you wanted to say or deliver the message that you wanted to deliver. And Adam Fox, nothing to do with it. He goes, no, nothing to say differently here. And then he went on and said, it's I'm just worried about the game, the effort, blah, 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 blah. None of this. Oh, yeah. I'm glad you asked me that because, listen, I didn't make it clear. Of course, I want to be here. I do want to see what happens or, whatever. Take it whatever path you want to. There was none of that from Adam Fox. And then you start thinking back. Well, it hasn't been a great couple years for Adam Fox. And I don't just mean on the ice, but everything, right? Bunch of his buddies get traded last season. He sees Chris Drury's heavy-handed way of getting rid of Jacob Trouba and, some of the other guys, Barclay Goudreau and, and then some of the guys that he came up with, a lot of the guys, Capo Caco and Philip Hedl and a lot of guys get traded. It was a crappy year. They missed the playoffs last season, so there's that. Then his name is in the captain's mix. Though I don't know how seriously he was in the mix to become the next Rangers captain, but who knows? Maybe he felt, I'm the guy. He wasn't the guy. JT Miller, gets the C. All right. So there's that. Maybe a little slight, going back to last year, he was also big time scapegoat, on Canada's game-winning goal. In the Four Nations when he's on the ice and he didn't have a great tournament. He looked slow in that tournament. Again, we've talked a lot about it, but again, that was, just another thing, kind of like a hit on his reputation. I'm sure it didn't sit well with him. Then when the United States, first announced their early Olympic players, hey, here's our first group of players on the Olympics. So Adam Fox wasn't on that list. He was on the original Four Nations list. And then he didn't make the team. He didn't make the Olympic team. That was a big blow. That's a big ego shot for him, right? Didn't make it. His Rangers coach, his Rangers GM, assistant coach now on the Rangers, throw David Quinn in the mix. Supposedly all, standing up for him, I guess. That's what we hear. Making a case for Adam Fox to be on the Olympic team, the U.S. Olympic team. Not good enough. Didn't make it. United States goes out and wins a gold medal without him when he returns to the lineup after injury, first game back. They're doing an Olympic celebration. JT Miller, Vincent Trocheck, Sully, Drury, Quinn, everybody, big standing ovation, USA. There's Adam Fox standing off to the side. Yeah. Did they really Did they really push for me? Did they really advocate for me? You don't think those thoughts are going through his head? I don't know. It's worth thinking about. Just adding up all these things that haven't been great for Adam Fox. Oh, didn't even mention the fact that he's missed 27, 26, 27 games this season. Upper body injury, comes back, then lower body injury. Season absolutely craters without him. And then the retool. The letter goes out. And Adam Fox, yeah, I could see him not being psyched about being here. He's a New Yorker, but maybe he feels it's time. Maybe there's a better situation for him. Or maybe he just needs to see. All right, let's see what the plan is. But let's talk about it at the end of the season. I respect that. If anything, he's being honest. He didn't lie, at least. Like, if this is really the way he feels, and he's ambiguous about where the Rangers are going and maybe what he wants, okay. He was honest. And he doubled. Listen, he didn't double down because he hasn't said anything harsh against the Rangers or anything like that. Or, I want out of here. He hadn't done that. So double down is probably not the right phrase. But he did have an opportunity to change the narrative. Like, basically Colin Stevenson, put his hands out and say, here you go. Now here's the primary assist. All you have to do is slap it into the empty net. But Fox, he didn't. He basically what he said before. So that's going to be looming over the New York Rangers heading into the offseason. And then the flip side, the other guy, Igor Shesterkin, he was out too, extended time, when the Panarin got traded in the retool and what have you. The letter goes out. And so he got asked about it, this past weekend. And here's Igor doing an interview in English. I know he's from Russia. But he's doing the interview in English, the post-game scrum. As soon as he was asked about that, he defaulted to what he does when he doesn't want to talk about something. He said, yeah, I don't know. I didn't read the letter. I don't speak English. Beauty. Our headline in Forever Blueshirts was, cheeky response, cheeky comment, from Igor Shesterkin. And it was. But then there was no follow-up. Like, nobody said, okay, yeah, come, all right, that's funny, Igor. But seriously, what's your take on the retool? What's your take on the letter? Are you all in? Again, we've heard that basically all the guys who have trade protection in their contracts have, behind the scenes and one-on-one and, conversations with Chris Sheary have said, hey, I'm in, I want to stay. That's what we've been told. That's what we've heard. Of course, it may not be true with Adam Fox. He might be having second thoughts. We'll see. Anyway, that is just all the backdrop to, the trade deadline is this week, and it comes Friday at 3:00. And so why don't we go through a list of players who are on the block with the Rangers? So these guys might get traded. These guys should be traded. Don't trade these guys. Let's go through the list when we return here on Rink Wrap. Welcome back to Rink Wrap. I'm Jim Cerny. Thanks for joining us on trade deadline week. We're just days and hours away from Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern time, and we'll see what Chris Sheary is able to do with his retool of this New York Rangers roster and organizational depth chart. And again, as I said at the beginning too, it's not just about the deadline, right? If you get more picks, or the Rangers already have a ton of picks for the 26 draft, a couple first rounders. I think they have 6 picks in the first 3 rounds. I mean, they have a lot of picks, in this draft, but maybe they get more as well. As Peter Boss said, and I referred to the interview we did with him, the conversation we had with him, on the most recent podcast, it kind of starts there. That's the base. You better make these draft picks work. Like, you better hit on draft picks. And the ones you make, whoever it is you make, develop these players as well. It's drafting and development. And let's face it, Rangers have not been great at either. They were not great at either. That's why the first rebuild didn't work out so great, did it? Yeah, the Rangers eventually made it to two, Eastern Conference Finals. But think about it. That rebuild really only produced 3 playoff seasons. I know they also got in during the COVID year. So, when they had more extra teams going in and, what have you. But really, they only had 3 playoff runs, the Rangers, that came out of their rebuild. It's because they misfired on one big pick after another. Jeff Gorton was all about, hey, let's get as many picks as we can. Basically, you throw enough, darts at the board, you're going to nail a few, right? But they missed on so many. And listen, they had their bad luck as well. Listen, they didn't have, Matthew Schaefer, Macklin Celebrini the year that they picked first overall. They didn't get a generational player. That's probably not their fault. It was Alexis Lafreniere. Everybody thought he'd be a special player. He's a good player. That's luck of the draw, I guess. But it starts with the draft. It starts with the development. And the Rangers have a lot of draft picks. So there's a lot more to come after this trade deadline to really set up the retool. And there might be more deals, and there probably will be. Boy, it's easy enough for me to say, right? Probably will be more trades come the off season. And we'll see where Adam Fox's head is at and all that. But let's just focus from right now, since what's right in front of us, and that's the Friday deadline. Who's here, who's gone when the deadline passes? All right. Start with Vinny Trocheck. 32 years old. His value probably is not going to be as high this offseason. Next trade deadline, the following offseason, he's going to be older. He's not coming off the Olympic gold medal. I guess he's still this offseason's coming off the Olympic gold medal. But you get the point. He's got 3 years remaining on his contract. You trade him now, what you're selling to another team is 4 years, 4 playoff runs of Vincent Trocheck. And he only makes like basically $5.5 million a year. Now listen, I know I said now listen a lot in this show, but listen, it's going to be diminishing returns down the road. That's why I think you trade him now. I really do believe that this is going to be his peak value. If you're Chris Sheary, you need to absolutely nail this trade. And again, as we mentioned earlier, Vincent Trocheck, he's expecting to be traded. He basically said as much the other day when speaking with the media, and he laid out his criteria. He wants to go to a cup contender. He wants to be on the East Coast. He has a 12-team no trade clause. He said, basically that includes everybody on the West Coast. I want to stay East. That's where my family is. Get it. Totally get it. But there are teams interested, as well there should be. But we hear that the Minnesota Wild have made their best offer, put their best foot forward. Michael Russo, who I've known for years. I mean, he's well sourced. He knows the Minnesota Wild. He's in there with Bill Guerin. So he's a tremendous reporter. He says that Bill Guerin's made his best offer because that's probably the best fit for Vincent Trocheck. Minnesota Wild, 3rd place in their division, but having a tremendous season, a legitimate Stanley Cup contender that already added Quinn Hughes to the mix this year. By the way, Trocheck, his Team USA teammates that are on Minnesota there, Hughes and Matt Boldy, and Billy Guerin was the GM of that team. I mean, too many things line up. Just makes too much sense. But the Rangers apparently have that offer. They know what it is. Russo says it's the best one that they're going to get from the Minnesota Wild. Like, Guerin doesn't mess around. He said, this is my offer. I'm not screwing around with you. The offer is not going to be go from here to here just because we have a deadline. I'm giving you my best offer now. All right. That's how he negotiates. And that's how he got the Quinn Hughes deal done. That came together pretty quickly. So Chris Drury's doing the right thing. If he knows that he has this offer in his back pocket, he's shopping that offer around. Hey, Carolina Hurricanes, what can you do? What? This? I've got this. I need something else. Detroit Red Wings, supposedly also in the mix. That's your offer? No, it's got to be better than that. So we'll see. We'll see what he's able to, to come out of this with. But I really believe that I almost knocked my water over here. I really believe, getting excited, really believe that Vincent Trocheck is a goner. And he may have played his final game at Madison Square Garden on Monday night. Because if he's not traded between now and or Thursday night when the Rangers play, there's a chance that they'll hold Vinny out of the lineup for roster management purposes. I'd be very surprised if we see him out there against the Maple Leafs on Thursday night. So there's that. And by the way, the final image of Vinny Trocheck's terrific run on Broadway. I know I'm talking about it in past tense, but a terrific free agent signing by Chris Drury. He has been everything and more than the Rangers could have hoped. A heart and soul guy, a leader, a dynamo in the faceoff dot, a 200-foot player, a great example for his teammates, big game player, came up big in big situations during the playoffs. at least 20 goals every season that he's played for the Rangers, except for this one. And of course, there's still time to go in this season, but, stayed healthy, played every game up until the beginning of the season when he missed most of October and, part of November with the upper body injury. Everything you could hope for. I mean, I'm not rushing this guy out the door. I think he's been a great New York Ranger. I mean, great, really. I'm not saying he's a great player, but he's been a great New York Ranger because there's so many things that encompass, being an important player on a team. And he check him off. He hits all the boxes. But again, he's 32 years old. Let's say this Ranger retool really does somehow, some way. Rangers hit all the right marks. And in a couple of seasons, they're back in playoff contention, assuming they're not next season. So in a couple of seasons, Vinny Trocheck's going to be 34. Where's he going to be at that point? You're already going to have JT Miller probably still here at age 34. And I don't think he's going to age well. I don't think that contract is going to age well. Mika Zibanejad, assuming, he and his no move clause is still here. He'll be 34. And you need 3 34-year-old centers in a couple of seasons when you think you're, coming out of the retool? Probably not. And right now, Vinny Trocheck is the guy that they can move because he only has a 12-team no trade. So again, I'm not giving him the buns rush out the door, but that's how I think it's going to play out. So spending most of the time here talking about Trocheck. Before I get to the other players, here's what the Rangers need to do in their retool. And we could, we could debate names and who these players are, but specifically what the Rangers need to do. They need to get speed into this lineup. Okay? Speed. They are not a great skating team at all by any stretch of the imagination. Any team that can skate in this league, and trust me, the league is trending that way to better skating teams anyway. I mean, it's a clear advantage that what those teams have over the Rangers. So listen, I'm not, I get it. I get the North said, let's play a North-South game. Let's grind. Let's win puck battles. I'm all for that as well. You still need size and physicality, commitment to the 200-foot game. But if you're talking about one thing that they're missing more than anything in their lineup these last 2 years, it's really stood out, is speed. And that comes in two forms. There's skating speed, of which they're lacking. They're lacking players that are fast skaters. Even we were talking about Gabe Perreault before. He's not a fast skater either. He's another one. Boy, that's going to be a disadvantage for him. That's something that he's going to have to navigate. Now, he has at every level up until this point. And I think he can. Not everybody has to be a burner. But skating's not a strength for him. He's got to figure that out. That's a big thing. But anyway, back to the original point. You need guys that can skate faster and quicker than you have now. So that's primary. That's number one when you're trying to trade for NHL prospects or NHL players that are on the cusp, NHL ready players, or kids that are younger players that are already playing in the league. Because that's what they need to do. They need to get young players that are playing in the NHL already. They need to get those that are right on the cusp of becoming NHL players, like Liam Greentree, good example. And when they draft, guess what? You better find some kids that can skate. And again, I understand. You also need the guys to grind. You need physicality and size, but they got to skate, because right now, that is the biggest difference between the Rangers and other teams in the NHL. So that's one. Need young players. Got to get younger here. Talent. You need talent. You need finishers. And you need guys that will fit into the room, that will be future leaders. I think of Noah Laba. What a great fit Noah Laba is for the Rangers and moving forward. And why, to me, he is an absolute key core piece. Even if he's a third-line player, even if he's a third-line center, a 3C for the rest of his days in blue. And listen, he could be a middle six guy too. He might, end up playing some second line as well down the road. We'll see how he develops. But he hits all the high marks, the intangibles, like Vinny Trocheck does. We'll see if he's got the skill. I don't know that he's a 20-goal guy. Listen, Trocheck scored 30 goals in the league before. So I'm not sure Laba's that. I'm not sure he's an all-star. Like Trocheck's been an all-star in this league. I could see him playing a middle, getting some middle 6 minutes. May even get some, if Trocheck's traded at the deadline, maybe Noah gets some there too. But you can see he's a future leader. He's a smart player. He's a driven player. There's no questioning his compete or will. He's got physicality. He can skate. Again, the 200-foot game, good on faceoffs. You need more of that kid. And you need more Gabe Perreault. So anyway, those are a couple of things that they need. So dialing it back now, I'm going to put together Braden Schneider and Alexis Lafreniere. I don't think either one is going to be traded before the deadline. I think the Rangers will revisit. Chris Drury's been having a lot of conversations, so he knows who's interested. He kind of knows what the market value is for Braden Schneider and Alexis Lafreniere. I think if you trade Lafreniere, it's got to be very similar to that Buffalo-Ottawa trade last season, the Cousins-Norris trade, right? Change of scenery. Two good young players, guys with talent, just maybe not quite working out in your city with your organization. I think that's the type of trade that they need to make with Alexis Lafreniere. I don't want to hear, we're, whatever, June 20th. Rangers trade Alexis Lafreniere, and they're getting back, a first round pick and, whatever. No, he's an NHL player. He's a top 6 NHL player right now. Top 6 line, a top 6 forward. Not one of the top 6 best players in the league, obviously. But Alexis Lafreniere, you need to get an NHL player back or two if you trade Alexis Lafreniere. And I feel the same way about Braden Schneider too, because that's going to leave a hole, in your lineup, in your defense core. And there aren't a ton of guys coming along here knocking on the door, to be a defenseman anytime soon for the New York Rangers, unless, hey, they go out, they make other trades or bring other guys in. I do like that since Adam Fox came back, these 3 games that he's been back since the break, that Braden Schneider's been playing on the left side. 2 things about that. The Rangers get to see if, hey, this is a legit option. I know he's a right-hand shot, but he can play on the left side pretty well. And that gets him into the second pairing with Will Borgen. I think they've looked pretty good together. I think that's a much better fit, actually, than Schneider on the top pairing with Gavrikov. That was too much. It was too much for Braden Schneider. Wasn't good enough. But that second pairing with him and Will Borgen, it's only been 3 games. I like it so far. Certainly liked it a lot, in that game against Columbus. Both of them activated really well. We'll see. So if he stays with the Rangers, and he's a restricted free agent with arbitration rights, similar to Keandre Miller was last summer, Rangers have a decision to make on him and his future. But let's say, I think there are more odds that he stays, unless somebody bowls them over this summer with a trade offer. I think Schneider stays. Okay. But now the Rangers know, or they will know by the end of the season, if Schneider is somebody that they can count on regularly to be a top 4 guy that can play on the left side, his offside. But if they do decide to trade him, it's a smart move to show, hey, look at Braden Schneider. He's not only 24, and he's got X amount of games of NHL experience already. He's played in conference finals and yada, yada, yada. But guess what? You can play him on the right side or the left side. If it wasn't good enough that he was, a right shot defenseman, but now he can play both sides. So I like the Rangers putting him on the left. Smart move. But I don't think either one of Schneider or Lafreniere is going before the deadline. So then going down the list, Sam Carrick could be traded, but what are you gaining if you're trading Sam Carrick? I think you're losing a lot. I think you're losing a heart and soul guy, maybe the Stephen McDonald Extra Effort Award winner this year. Heart and soul guy. With Matt Rempe out of the lineup, he's taken on, the fighting responsibilities and standing up for teammates. He's a solid penalty kill guy, solid on the faceoff, solid in the locker room, chips in with the odd goal here and there. You can't get him out of the lineup. He plays through injury and pain and all that. And I know he's an older player, but he's got 1 year at $1 million left on his contract. So unless somebody, gives you a mid-round pick and you say that's more valuable, okay. But if you trade Vinny Trocheck, now you're getting thinner down the middle. And it's not like, in Hartford, we've got, these 4 prospects that play center. It's not great down there either. Yeah, sure. Maybe you want to get a look at Dylan Rubrek at some point. He's in his second year, 21 years old, scored 20 goals last season in Hartford, but is fallen back this year. But, really? I don't know. Sure, you want to see him, but I think in the bigger picture for this season and next, I think Sam Carrick just brings more value, and there's nobody in the system to knock him out of that spot. Kerry Terrence, he's got a long way to go as a prospect. He's still 20, and he's been okay. He's his first pro season at Hartford. There's nobody knocking on the door for that spot, unless the Rangers get somebody back in one of these trades. And then you say, oh, well, we've got a bottom 6 center who's 25 years old instead of 33, 34 years old. And, we believe in him and he's going to be part of our mix going forward. Just like how they picked up Kartye off waivers. Okay. Then you make a spot for him and you trade Sam Carrick. But I wouldn't be rushing to push him out the door either. Taylor Raddysh, If they get something for him, a draft pick or, prospects, a lower level prospect, obviously, great, fine. You could live with him or without him. Again, he's not making a lot of money. He's a bottom 6 guy. I don't think he kills you out there. I don't know that he pushes the needle so positively, but he can score a little bit. I don't think he's been a terrible Ranger. I don't think he's a big part of the problem here. So if he stays. So I'd say 1 out of 2. I don't think Carrick and Raddysh both are going to be gone. They each have a year to go on their contract. Maybe one of the two before the deadline. Okay. Now let's talk about some of the kids. Brennan Othman, Brett Berard. I really believe that one, if not both, won't be here past the deadline. And maybe they're part of a bigger trade. Maybe they're packaged with Vinny Trocheck or, something, or they feel like they can do a swap, on a much lower level, but the similar idea of what I mentioned before with Cousins and Norris. Maybe they can do a similar thing here. Hey, somebody's first round pick or what they thought was going to be a top prospect, kind of not working out. Let's do change of scenery. We'll trade Brennan Othman for that. I'd be surprised if he's here past the deadline. And if he is here past the deadline, I think they trade him in the offseason. I just don't see the future with him here. Mike Sullivan clearly doesn't believe in him. And he's really only had fourth line opportunities when he's been in the NHL. His play is picking up a little bit in the A. He's playing a little bit better in Hartford. He's producing more there. He had a slow start, but he's producing more. Ditto for Brett Berard. But he's another one. You talk about guys that Mike Sullivan kind of canceled out, right? You thought Brett Berard was probably going to play a role on this team this year. He really hasn't. For one reason or another. And listen, he brings speed too. Energy. He's not a Sully guy. Brett Berard, Brennan Othman, Juuso Parssinen, who's down in Hartford too. I think if they could trade him and get something back, especially if it's a body, not a draft pick, I think they would do that. He's another one. He's clearly not, a Sully guy. Now, here's the thing with Parssinen, who, by the way, has picked up his offense since he's healthy again down in Hartford. If you do trade Vinny Trocheck, and if you decide JT Miller is going to, continue to play on the same line with Mika Zibanejad, Juuso Parssinen might get a recall. They'll need a center. Now, listen, they could go Zibanejad centers one line, Miller centers another, Laba Carrick. Okay. Then there's no demands for Juuso Parssinen to be in the NHL. But, if they're going to take a center here, hit my water again. If they're going to, move a center and need to bring somebody up, Juuso Parssinen's probably that guy. So keep that in mind as well. But I don't think he's a Sully guy either. Earl Vakanainen doesn't appear to be a Sully, favorite either. I don't think he's being traded. I think, he's a serviceable extra defenseman. So I don't think he's going anywhere. So we went through those guys. Johnny Brodzinski is not a Sully guy. It's like a last resort to put Johnny Brodzinski in the lineup. Maybe there's a team out there that, for a lower level draft pick or, maybe a minor league prospect or something that takes Brodzinski on, to be an extra forward, basically what he is with the Rangers. But I don't think he's a Sully guy either. So Jonathan Quick, I think he stays. I don't think there's a big market for him. He hasn't played great. He got exposed the more he played, 40 years old, and, he's got the no move clause. So, or, partial no trade, whatever it is. I'm actually forgetting right now, but, I know he's got some control there. Jonathan Quick, he didn't want to go anywhere. He publicly stated it. He's a Connecticut guy, grew up a Ranger fan. He's at the end of a Hall of Fame career. I think he'll be the backup the rest of the season. The one guy that I would say, listen, he cannot be taking ice time after March 6th is Connor Sheary. God bless him, 2-time Stanley Cup winner. Respect him. He's got more rings than I do, that's for sure. But, I get it. He's a hardworking bottom six guy. He's a Sully favorite. There is a Sully guy. They won championships together. The Rangers got to trade him. If there's some team out there, some contender says, you know what, Connor Sheary's a perfect 13th or 14th forward for us. If you're the Rangers, take whatever you can get. Say, okay, great. He's yours. Because he can't be in the way of, go down the list, whoever's remaining after the deadline that he might be taking a spot from, that the Rangers need to get a look at. Parsonen, Berard, Othman, if he's still here. Any one of a number of these young guys, Brisson, those guys got to play. Sheary, was here, probably played too much up the lineup as it was. He's proven that he's healthy. He's come back, played 3 games since the break. He's past the lower body injury. Trade him. There's got to be somebody out there that thinks that he's a 13th or 14th forward for them. Stanley Cup rings and all that. So can't be a Ranger after the break. And real quickly, the Kartye and Iorio additions, claiming them off the waiver wire, all for it. Young players with pedigree. In Iorio's case, he's a second-round pick by the Capitals. I know he's been on waivers twice this season. He's playing on his 3rd team this season. See what you got. To me, it's a no-lose thing. He's a young defenseman, right shot defenseman. Okay, you could argue he's taking opportunities away from Scott Morrow. Well, listen, Scott Morrow hasn't kicked down the door either and said, I need to I'm a defenseman on, the New York Rangers in the NHL. I own this spot. He hasn't kicked down the door and proven enough yet. So if he plays a game and Iorio plays another game and then Morrow's back in there, so be it. Let them compete, for that spot. See what you got. And I'm not saying either one of them is a star, and I believe the upside is better for Morrow. But I'm not against bringing Iorio in, claiming him off waivers and giving him an opportunity. And, that's what the Rangers have done so far. And with Kartye, there's less of pedigree. He's an undrafted guy, but he is shown to be who he is. He plays a hard game. He's a physical player, stand up for his teammates, will lead by example physically. And he's looked good out there his first couple games. He is not going to be a big offensive threat, but on the third line, if you're trying to build a little bit of an identity third line, him and Laba, and then figure it out on the other side, it's not a bad start. Again, nothing to lose. You claim them off waivers. If you say, we can do better than this, so be it. Now, what happens? You put him back on waivers. You send him to the minors, if he clears. All right, no big deal. But maybe you find a hidden gem. It's restocking the depth chart, because this depth chart is no good. And of course, I think by the end of the season, we'll be hearing about Liam Greentree and Nathan Aspinall, turning pro. I'd expect that, after their final, what should be their final years of junior hockey. 2 big guys, scored a lot in the OHL. See what they have. Excited to see them at Hartford, find out what level of prospect they really are as they take the next step up, because the warning is right smack dab in front of you. We thought Brendan Othman was going to be a star, right? Or at least an NHL regular coming out of junior, coming out of the World Juniors as well. And a pretty good rookie pro season with Hartford. And we've seen how that goes. So, have an open mind, pro and con, for Aspinall and Greentree when they turn pro. But there's that to look forward to. Drew Fortescue, I'd expect, 3 years at BC. I don't see him going back to college for a fourth year. I think he's going to turn pro when BC's season ends. And let him start developing down at Hartford. Left shot D, guy that's been a shutdown D in college and in the World Juniors. We'll see where his game projects once he's at Hartford. Excuse me. He's not going to Harvard. Hartford. They have to make a decision on Brody Lamb, draft pick, senior at Minnesota. I don't know how big a talent or a prospect he's going to be at the NHL level, but let's see. He scored some goals at Minnesota. He's been pretty reliable. He's been a leader there, worn the sea with the Golden Gophers. But we'll see. Rangers have not signed him yet. Though I think that was more Brody Lamb's decision than the Rangers. So again, his senior season is coming to a close soon. So, right there, you could have 4 prospects, kind of moving up the pipeline, or could be moving up the pipeline. I do not see EJ Emery or Malcolm Spence just yet turning pro. Could be wrong, especially Emery. He's a first-round pick. So maybe he will turn pro after 2 seasons in North Dakota. Not sure about that though. He's developing. It's been a little bit, slower, steady and slow. And Spence, I don't think there's a reason to rush him. Second season at Michigan next year probably would be it for him. But I think 2 seasons for him is probably going to be good. So in any case, so that's what's up ahead. Rebuild, restock, as they reset and retool the New York Rangers ahead of Friday's deadline. And again, if you get frustrated and say, oh, this is all they did, that's one deadline. But a retool is just not about getting it done by the deadline. It's going to continue on into the offseason. And we're going to be here to track it every step of the way over at foreverblueshirts.com. And of course, here on the Rink Rap podcast. So we'll catch you later in the week. We'll recap what the Rangers did. And of course, we'll continue to do that down the road. Again, both on the website and here on the Rink Rap podcast. Thanks for joining me today, and have yourself a great week and enjoy the trade deadline. I hope. Don't get too pissed off. All right. Cheers.